So even if you don't know this band in particular, there's one song from them that you might know, that being this.
I just wanna fly. Put your arms around me, baby. Put your arms around me, baby.
Pretty much the biggest hit the band had. It's not the only hit that this band had, but it was the one that brought them to stardom, and then after 2 albums of heavy nu metal, funk metal, almost kind of punk rock in some sort of ways, they decided, you know, this song we released on the record here, we want to continue doing songs like that. The sound changed drastically, and now in 2022 we're here, and Sugar Ray is kind of a forgotten relic. So it leads me to wonder, was it right for them to switch things up? And where would they be now without the song Fly? Well, let's talk about it.
Someday, when my life has passed me by, I lay around and wonder why.
So in 1995, they released their debut album, Lemonade and Brownies. Now, this wasn't an independent release. This was actually released through Warner Music. Quick correction, it was actually Atlantic Records. None of the singles really did anything. The album was kind of a flop itself, but Warner gave them another shot. And come 1997, their second album, Florida, was released. And although it had a couple of minor nu metal hits, the song Fly on this record, which had 2 versions, one with the rapper, one without the rapper, seemed to just kind of climb on the rock charts around the world, mainly in the US, and all of a sudden Sugar Ray was becoming this household name. The only thing about that song is it was different from anything else on that record. Whereas the record had more of a chuggy feel, like I said, more nu metal-y and all this kind of stuff, Fly was more of a softer kind of song that almost kind of had this sunshine beach feel, and it was just kind of, it was an oddball on the record. And at the time, if you were to play someone that song and then play them anything else off that record or even their first record, I don't know if people would have been super attracted to Sugar Ray as a band overall. As a matter of fact, there would be a band a couple years later that would kind of pull a Sugar Ray, but then not ever do what Sugar Ray did. And by that I mean Crazy Town released Butterfly.
Come my lady, come my lady, you're my butterfly, sugar baby.
And that was their, you know, big, not necessarily acoustic track, but softer track, and they were more known for this nu metal sound, this heavier type sound. But instead of pulling what Sugar Ray pulled, Crazy Town just continued to go about their ways of doing what they did, and they kind of fell off pretty quickly and never really had a humongous hit after that. But Sugar Ray said, we are going to just do what we did for the song Fly for pretty much the rest of our careers. As by the time their third album came out, which was titled 1459, which is basically just a dig at the people, the critics saying, oh, well, they're just living off their 15 minutes of fame, we kind of saw the drastic change in sound. Now, most bands and artists will change sound by their third record, I believe, but it's usually never, like, egregious. Like, you can never fully tell the difference quite yet, but with Sugar Ray, they just kind of went, nope, no more nu metal, this is what we're doing, more alternative pop rock type songs, and the song Someday came off of this. I think that was the next big hit that they had, and this is their best-selling album to date, mainly because they were doing the sound of their biggest hit song that came out just a couple years before, and they had never been bigger at this point. Considering in the early 2000s, nu metal kind of stuck around, but people were starting to get less attracted to it. They were really starting to be pulled away, and by like 2003, 2004, nu metal wasn't the go-to genre. So you can say that Sugar Ray kind of did the right thing by just completely just ditching that sound and going to what made them so popular in the first place. Fast forward 2 more years later, yeah, they kind of had a pattern releasing an album every 2 years. They released their 4th studio album, which was just a self-titled album. The sound is still kind of the same from the previous record, but it's less alt rock and more pop rock, because this sounds more like Sugar Ray turning into a boy band, and this album didn't sell as well as their previous two entries, so you were kind of starting to see not necessarily the decline of Sugar Ray, but they were going to slowly kind of start to fall off after this. Their next claim to fame was making a cameo in the 2002 Scooby-Doo movie, and their song Words to Me, which came off of this album, being a part of the soundtrack.
Yo, the biatch was like, what? And I was like, later on.
After that, Sugar Ray became very scarce when it came to radio play, at least their new songs, as in 2003, their fifth album, The Pursuit of Leisure, came out, and it kind of saw them not really doing a whole rock thing anymore. It was mainly doing a lot of pop, incorporating more hip-hop into their sound. That was, I think, the album where everybody just kind of stopped even paying attention, because somehow they got more and more simple as the albums went on, and I think this was the final nail in the coffin. This album did not sell well. The singles didn't do really much of anything, if they did at all, and band turmoil was starting to kick in. I mean, there's been a lot of lineup changes in this band, but this was around the time when I think the band itself was just kind of getting tired of doing this pandering to the audience, or at least other band members. That's what I would at least think, because how do you go from an album like Floored to 1459 just 2 years later, when you were still, headbanging to their songs, and now their songs seem to only be wanted to be played in like a party kind of scenario or like a beach scenario. They would continue down that road, as that wouldn't be their last album. Now, it'd be 6 years down the line in 2009, after many lineup changes and kind of a mini hiatus, that they would release music for the Cougars. The Cougars is basically a term for the older women, the moms. This kind of still stuck to their pop rock sound, didn't do anything, and everybody kind of thought, maybe that's it. Maybe Sugar Ray will break up, and that'll be the final nail in the coffin. Maybe Mark McGrath will just do solo work. Who knows at this point in time? And it did take them a while, but when I was doing my research for this video, I realized it's been less than 4 years since they've released another album. And I didn't even know. Like, I had known about the video that Cody Ko and Noel Miller made, where they did the whole Sugar Gay thing. They played the video of the kid calling Mark McGrath Sugar Gay, and Mark McGrath getting all pissed off and all this kind of stuff.
It must have just been building for years and years and years.
1 million Sugar Gay.
Yeah,
a million and one. It's just like, dive so
At it!
Yeah.
Stop calling me Sugar Gay! Who said Sugar Gay? Who said that shit?
I love how he's signing autographs like amongst this.
He's like, I'll beat your fucking ass!
No worries, man. No worries.
Sugar Gay.
I'm not!
Sugar what, bro? Sugar what? So you Sugar Gay. I'm not gay. I'm not gay.
Yeah. Mark's outside. What do you mean, Sugar Gay?
Runs in. I'll beat the fuck
Just out the window.
I'll beat the shit out of you.
And heck, they even had Mark McGrath on their podcast later to kind of talk about it, and McGrath explained more of what went on and why he went off on that kid probably more than he should have. So, that was kind of putting Sugar Ray back in the spotlight just a little bit, whether you view it as negative or positive. That was kind of like the last time I had heard anything from them. I didn't know if they were touring, I didn't know what they were doing, but I found out in 2019 they released an album independently called Little Yachty. Nothing to do with the rapper Little Yachty, that's just what this album's called, because when you listen to it, Jesus Christ, remember when I mentioned how their songs were basically made to be played in like a beach party scenario after, you get to 1459 and on? Well, this one just takes that to a whole new level and flips the lever up to 11. I mean, it doesn't even fully feel like it's like a band anymore. This definitely feels like Mark McGrath by himself, even though there are other band members in this at this point. But they're making these cheesy kind of generic beach songs, and they even cover the Pina Colada song, which that just kind of threw me off, because I know they've had covers of songs on their other albums before, but I was like, never did I think in my life that the band that did RPM would be doing the Pina Colada song. Like, it threw me off so much.
If you love pina colada,
Now, no matter what you think of Sugar Ray, you can probably say that what they did probably kept them going a little longer than they would have if they would have stuck the nu metal route. Because most bands, when they get that one hit song that's different from the others, they tend to stick with what they do. They don't want to ever change their sound to that was just a one-time thing, you know, that's not what represents the band. But Sugar Ray knew if a change wasn't going to be made soon, then they were just going to kind of be a one-hit wonder. Fly would have been their only hit song, and maybe they would have had like another song kind of chart for a little while, but they never would have been able to reach the top like they did there. And to continue on and just drastically change their sound, I know it probably alienated a lot of their original fan base, but you got to think of all the newcomers it brought in, because when people were starting to hear these songs and go, oh, maybe this just, Fly wasn't a one-time, like, oh, this is different and the other songs sound like this. No, they actually sound like this, or they're actually dedicated to sound like this. And like I said, it brought more people in. And now, you know, they're just one of those bands that is lost in memory now, but we look back and go, it was kind of interesting, because there were many bands that did this before, but they were like the first to really take it on like a drastic level in the nu metal genre, because a lot of these nu metal bands, they changed for better or for worse, but none of them did it more egregiously than this band did, just because they wanted to keep their popularity up. I don't know if that has anything to do with Mark McGrath just wanting to keep the hits coming, or maybe it was a case where the band wanted to try different things. They were tired of doing the nu metal, and they said, you know what, let's take this risk. Because who knows, maybe Sugar Ray was making this move without thinking that any success would come from it, but yet it had more success than they probably thought it ever would. For at least 2 more albums, they stayed in the mainstream spotlight and were a name that you could get to come to your venues or play on this show, then you knew you had a really, really good band coming on the show. Not that I think Sugar Ray's a good band, I'll get to that in a minute, but you just gotta praise them for what they did and doing it so drastically without kind of any warning, I think, and especially back in 1999 when the internet was prominent, but you couldn't tease like you did back then, so when people just kind of heard it, they were like, oh, well, this is not what I expected at all. Now, there's Sugar Ray songs that I do like. Again, my Uncle Ray, I grew up, he was into a lot of bands like this, and I especially heard the album Floored a lot. And I remember when they started to change, he kind of started, you know, falling out of love with them too, but in the end, he still listened to some of the songs, and of course, I like the song they had on from Scooby-Doo. Words to me is kind of a, you know, definitely a pop rock song, but it's a catchy one. Like, I don't know what it is about it, but I think just hearing it as a kid when they played the part in the movie when Mark McGrath is singing to Daphne, it just kind of caught my attention, and I'm like, I gotta listen to this song, I gotta hear what it is. And it's just a friendly song, but that's the thing about this band. They went from, I'm gonna beat your ass, oh you asshole, or I'm gonna get this chick, to just singing these love songs, or almost kind of like breakup songs, or I miss you songs in a way, and doing some of these more like upbeat, like, hey, we're gonna have fun, and we're gonna go to the beach, and this, that, and the other. Like, it's some of it's fine, but I could never say that I was like fully on board with Sugar Ray in the first place. I kind of, you know, thought that they would be one of those relic bands that we'd kind of look back on and be like, yeah, that happened. But to be honest with you, past their 2003 record, I think pretty much their first 4 records, or at least 3 of their 4 records that were first, from Floored to the self-titled, were pretty well received by critics. I mean, they were like the go-to thing, and it wasn't until the critics started falling out of love that I think everybody else did, and that kind of sucks, because this just seems like everybody else was following the critics' word rather than listening to the music to follow. But I did listen to all these albums to kind of get the gist of where people were coming from when they said, oh, Sugar Ray changed big time. And you were right, and really, after their self-titled record, their last 3 albums have gotten less fun, and there really hasn't been anything on those records that I would say is worth being a hit, and that's kind of why they just kind of quieted down over the years. They still tour, but when it comes to making albums, it's very, like, you just gotta guess, because, like I said, after their 2003 record, they released a record 6 years later, and then it would take them 10 years to even release another record, and that one just kind of came and went because it was more independent, and it really wasn't meant to be anything other than a beach anthem. So, yeah. That's basically all I have to say about this. I'd really like to hear your opinions below. What you think about Sugar Ray overall? How do you think as a band they took their fame? Did they make the right move by changing things up? Did they do it too early? Are you just kind of like in between with it? Like, either way, they were eventually going to be one of those bands where it was like short-lived, and for about 4 years or so, they were around, but after that, it just kind of became prevalent that people didn't want to listen anymore. They were on to the new thing, which at that point in time would have been like emo and pop punk, and Sugar Ray was just kind of swept away. So, yeah, that's it for me. Stay safe out there, and until then, I will catch you all in the next one.
Sugar gay!
Who said sugar gay?